We're live.
All right, take two.
Take two.
I love technology.
Welcome, everybody.
Yay, EMP. All right, so I apologize for not giving y'all more notice. I thought I had set this up about 2 hours ago, and it wasn't. And then it was set up for the wrong time, and then I deleted the wrong one. And so I think we're here, and I think people might be able to see us, but nobody's on yet. So I guess we will pause momentarily.
We are here just drinking our electrolytes.
Hopefully my throat will last for the duration.
Yes.
We wanted to, and I'm going to kill, I have my bug gun here, and I'm going to kill this fly the first opportunity. So
Alice.
Thank you. Okay, so you can see in here, so that's a good start.
Thank you.
That's better than most.
Thanks for letting us know.
All right, so I've been having lots of discussions lately. I've been having lots of discussions lately with friends and at work. And this is to encourage y'all, because it can be very discouraging. It appears that the world is getting darker. It appears, I don't think it appears. I mean, the world is clearly getting darker, obviously more confused. People don't even understand basic genetics. There's an inordinate amount of confusion with gender, et al., whatever. And part of the solution is recognizing the problem. Mm-hmm. And the problem is a very, obviously, as Christians, okay, the overarching problem to everything is sin. Mm-hmm. Man is fallen. And so sin is the overarching problem. Theologically and philosophically, sin has always been the problem. Mm-hmm. And there were times, at least from an American, and I would say a world perspective, just like all these issues we are having are not American issues. These are, relatively speaking, global issues. Now they're not as thick in other parts of the world, but sin has been the overarching problem since the beginning of creation. Mm-hmm. I want to drill down, sometimes people always want to hit the highest theological point to kind of like tell you that you're doing it wrong, or no, you're wrong, it's sin and all that stuff, which, okay, Captain Obvious, thank you. I mean, I understand that. But sin has always been the problem. And in society, like, if you can just wind back less than 100 years, when a man knew he was a man and didn't want to be a woman, and a woman knew she was a woman and didn't want to be a man, and no young person thought they were a cat or a dog or anything like that. It wasn't that long ago, and sin was still sin, and sin was still the largest problem. But what I'm talking about is the de-evolution of society through postmodernism by design, Frankfurt School, the whole nine. We're in a very huge social experiment, y'all. And this is Satan's social experiment. This isn't the Illuminati or anything doing this. Because what you'll find is that the Illuminists, like Macron and all these guys that are married to dudes and stuff, like, Macron's married to a dude, and that just came out, and that happened a really long time ago. That guy's like 70 years old, and that guy was Macron's university school teacher as well. So then there's that. But I just want to talk about not getting discouraged when I actually had a brief conversation on Twitter today too. And they were saying that, and I'm a Baptist, and this was some Baptist guys talking about, getting back to this, basically, to shorten it down, reform theology or whatever. And my point is that, well, there's plenty of people that are very tuned in on their reformed theology, and it's very reformed, and they have a high view. Soteriologically, they have a high view of God and salvation and all that stuff. But yet, they have a very incredibly pragmatic view when it comes to the world's entertainment, professional sports, Hollywood, cultural relevance, and all these different things. And this is the frustrating part that could get you discouraged. And this is also the same exact part that make people flee to cults like Hebrew roots and, make you want to run around in a tunic and say Yahuwah and all that stuff. Because we've made, culturally, we've made Christianity kneel to the culture. Mm-hmm. Like everything, but you don't understand. What are you, a Luddite? What do you don't think women should vote? Well, yeah, if I was going to be completely honest, I would say yes, but still, that's symptoms. Okay. Symptoms is part of the problem, symptoms. And this whole, and this is why I wanted my wife on here to talk about fourth wave feminism that is completely long. We're at the end, right? Which is why men can compete in women's sports, and do you see how the argument is wrong? Because in reality, there shouldn't be women's sports. Okay. Right. But the conservative thing is to argue men shouldn't compete in women's sports. But the bigger question is, it's just like the government school question. Mm-hmm. Should they teach this in government school? No. First, the question is, should there be government school? Mm-hmm. And these are these sociological and societal questions that I think if anyone was being honest, now you both have to come from the same worldview. Like it's the men. Okay. And I think this breaks it down. And this is like a brain breaker for most people. And I was having this conversation at work yesterday, is a man wearing a dress. And why is that wrong?
Right. And I think that to find the solution to all of these problems, all you have to do is become a diligent student of history. And all you have to do is pick up some books that were written about 50 to 100 years ago and start reading them and start diving into what the culture was then, and get back to what is real femininity and what is real masculinity. And then it's not easy, but you have to start to evaluate yourself and self-analyze. Because as much as we try and strive to be counterculture, our culture still has a very heavy influence on us. And although like I am not on any type of social media like Instagram, Facebook, I'm not on anything like that because I'm busy during the day doing my duties in my home. But even without all of that influence, still, um, we do watch YouTube, and still there is influence from the culture. There's still, and it creeps in so unknowingly, and we can see it really easily in our children, but it happens with us too. We just don't see it with ourselves. And we, when we do a self-evaluation of ourselves, we feel like we're doing pretty good. You know, if you're a solid Christian woman, and you're striving to be feminine, and you're striving to homeschool your children, and to be in submission to your husband, and to reverence your husband, and to hold the line, you know, with whether it's Reformed theology or just a very, you know, grounded theological belief system, you think you're doing pretty good. But when you pick up a history book, or you pick up anything written 50 to 100 years ago, you don't have to go back very far at all. You're going to be like, wow, I'm pretty much a feminist. Like, wow, in my thoughts and in my actions and in my attitude, I am not winning this. Like, I'm really losing this culture war. And that is true self-evaluation, and it's a good place to just get really honest with yourself, you know.
And it would be ideally, and what it should be is we should be able to point to our elders who should be demonstrating, modeling this, teaching it, training it, disseminating it in a practical way. We should be able to do that. And for whatever reason, unfortunately, we cannot. You know, the culture, pragmatism, and the culture, and in my opinion, feminism, has led to the deconstruction of what was once good in the created nuclear family, in the order in which God created it, the patriarchal order that God created it in. And, you know, no one wishes to model that. No one wishes to teach that. And maybe you can find a single, you know, one family over here, another family on the East Coast, another family in Alaska, or whatever. There's certainly not a group of individuals that, you know, adhere to that. And you know, and it can be discouraging. And but the point isn't to be discouraged. The point is to, you know, it's kind of like everything that we try to do is we try to be, you want to be the example, and regardless of what everybody else does. I mean, it's way easier to talk sports ball and all that dumb stuff. It's way easier. It's easier even psychologically, because it requires very little thought. And it's way easier to go with the flow, you know. And but we have to be like your friend was saying, we have to be the filter. We have to be that filter to filter out the trash for our children, and simultaneously, while doing that, giving them all the avenues and the venues to fill their time with productive, creative things that they wish to pursue and go after and achieve. And that's the beauty of it, is we can very easily, and, you know, and I say this from experience, we can very easily replace the Hollyweird and sports ball and all these just dumb, these things are non-productive things. They are not going to help you in life. Oh, well, team sports, and you'll learn how to be part. Well, you're a member of a family, and that's the greatest team sport there is. And so if you want to learn how to be a part of a team, you learn how to be a productive part of the family. And then the greater productive part of the family doesn't have to drive you all around the world while you chase a ball and play games. You can actually do something productive and create, and probably when you're 19 or 20 years old, you'll have a substantial start to life where you can actually pursue life, like finding a spouse and getting married and building a house and building a life, instead of just like going to college and accumulating debt and then getting out. And the main modern method of way of everything is done is absolutely wrong. It's absolutely backwards. It's anti-family. In a real way, it's anti-human. And if you want to know why every country has a collapsing population, right? And this is, you don't even have to get into all the gender bender, blender, trans testicle stuff or any of that stuff. And China has a collapsing population. They don't have the same social issues that we have. So, but they have deconstructed and destroyed the family and handed it over to the state.
Yes. And I think that, one big part, there's lots of solutions that we're going to be talking about this evening. One I just was speaking about was self-evaluation. Pick up some old books, find some YouTube channels. There are thousands, literally thousands. We aren't alone in, we might be alone in a remnant sense of like, living a separated life in some aspects, but we aren't alone as women and families, and women do kind of set the tone for the family. And, that's why that's all been undermined, and that's why that's all destroyed, because they know that. And if they can not just take the mother out of the home, but if they can strip her of her femininity, and in doing so strip the man of his masculinity, then they've essentially just neutered the family. And it doesn't work. We can obviously see it. We grew up in the 70s and 80s, and it was just so clear at that point that it was gone. But find some YouTube channels. There's literally thousands of them that are trying to go back and live a slower paced life, live a counterculture life. And then,
interestingly enough, they're being mocked quite a bit as well. It's kind of funny.
And then be brave enough to live that life,
right.
and teach your kids that it's okay to be different. Like our older boys, they love being different. Like they embrace the old man culture. Like they don't want to do all of the things and be like looking like the younger culture and all of that. It's okay. Like we've just taught them, like, it's okay to be different. It's okay to stand out. And, who they identify with is the older generations, like the older generations. And that's why they're like plaid shirts, tucked in, cowboy belt, hat, like that is who they are. And if and it's okay to, if you say, well, that's not who I am, well, that's okay. It's okay to reinvent yourself too. It's totally fine to say, that's who I used to be. Behold, all things become new, right? And we can take on a new way of life. You can take on a new identity, right? Like we didn't always used to be homesteaders. We didn't always used to be Texans, but it's okay. I didn't always used to be feminine, but now I embrace that more and more, and that's okay. It's totally okay to give yourself permission. We don't identify in the past. We press on, we press forward, right? So you hear that a lot with parents with children. Like the other day I was in a store and the lady said, well, I already messed up with that, I already gave my younger kids cell phones. And I was just like, that's so sad. Like, it's okay. You can correct. Like, that's the beauty of being a human being, is that you don't have to say, well, I already made that decision. They already listen to bad music and they're already so engulfed in the culture. There's just no turning back now. No, it's never too late. It's never too late for us as adults. And it's never too late as parents with children to, honestly sit down with them and repent and tell them, like, you're sorry and you messed up and I thought it was a good idea and it's not a good idea. And then, like you said, looking for all those opportunities that they can pursue and you can say yes to, so that they can be not these weird, isolated, abstract, like introverted, hermit homeschoolers. Like you don't want to create that.
No, your kids do not have to be weirdos, and they certainly don't have to be like awkward. If anything, it should be the opposite.
They should be very self-confident, that they know who they are. They know, and they can go and engage in society, and they know who they are. They're very strong and independent in who they are. So finding those opportunities that you can say yes to, anything that you can say yes to, you say yes to.
I think that I think the cell phone analogy is great, right? Because now all of us adults, we could basically, certainly if you're working, okay, like, and I would love to like bury my cell phone 8 feet under dirt and never look at it again. But I work, and so much of that work function is mobile, and it makes my job much easier, communication much better. It gives me the ability to produce probably 40 times what I could without it, in volume and the speed of communication and scheduling people and crews and different things, to have that instant. And so from a business standpoint and from a productivity standpoint, I couldn't imagine life without it, right? Even though 30 years ago, I mean 20 years ago, we didn't have anything remotely like what we have now as far as total communication. And all that being said, you would never, let me rephrase that. You should never give that to a child that is not an adult. You know what I mean? Because that's why when we started with cell phones with the boys, we did a data only, like a Trumi deal. So there was no type of web interface or anything like that.
Yes. And that's a great option if you have kids and you're looking for a phone. Trumi, we started out with Gab phones, but then we went to Trumi because they had a little bit more on it, but they don't have access to all of the apps. There's only apps that are approved through Trumi, but they have like a Bible app. They have like a calculator, a calendar.
They can listen to audiobooks and different things like that.
Yeah, they can listen to their audiobooks. They can download stuff onto their phone, but they don't have internet access. But they do have GPS, which is really important when they're driving. So generally speaking, we did not give our kids cell phones until they were able to drive. I say generally because our youngest of the first three does have a Trumi phone now. But he got it a little bit early. He's not going to be driving until June, but he got his Trumi phone a few months early because his big brother started driving. And so now we have obviously two driving. Our oldest is 19. So our oldest son, when he turned 19 this year, he's had his construction business now for, I don't know, a year, I guess it's been
6 months.
6 months. And he asked us, if he could just go ahead and get
a conventional phone.
A conventional phone, just because he needed to reply to emails, he needed to be able to send out quotes, he needed
and a lot of time
business.
They were on jobs and would want to reference YouTube on how to resolve things. And
right.
At some point in time, they have to become adults and be able to manage these things. And the time was right for him. And that's part of that maturation process.
But we still have rules around the cell phone. Like, because he has a normal cell phone with internet, all the cell phones and devices come back. Well, that's it. All we have is cell phones, but they all come back into the house at night and they all get plugged in. They're in one spot. So we don't just have kids on cell phones
stuff floating around.
And like I said, the younger ones just have Trumi phones, and that's all they need. I mean, so.
But I mean, that is really kind of a microcosm of a lot of the issues where, in a broader sense, you'll hear it all the time. Well, they got to learn this stuff, just like the the professing Christian people that send their kids to public schools to be Christian warriors at the age of 8. Right. So we got to go there and be the salt and the light. Like your 8-year-old has to swim in the public cesspool to be an assault in the light in the government school system.
I think they say your brain's not even fully developed until you're 25. So you're assuming that child can, even 18, 19 years old, think back when you were 18 or 19 years old, think about how much discernment and discretion you had. You're not fully mature. And I'm not saying you can't go and get married or whatever. You grow up. I understand. And getting married is the best way to grow up. It's the fast track to maturity. I'm a big believer in that. I saw an older gentleman comment on one of our videos, and he said, I'm so tired of these people saying that they're talking to their teenagers and telling their teenage boys, they have to wait so long for marriage. He said, the thing that grows up a boy into a man is marriage. All you're doing is stunting their growth.
That's true.
Wow. You're holding them back. You're handicapping these young men. Marriage is the best thing to mature you. And Lord willing, you find the right partner. And
unfortunately, all these poor girls have just been raised to, just in case, you should go to college, and just in case, because you never know, and you need to be able to support yourself. And it's so anti-Christian. It's so anti-God. You should be able to support yourself. Well, God supplies my needs. And I realize that's the higher, that's the snooty Christian answer. And I'm not saying I'm not going to go to work anymore because God will supply all my needs according to his riches and glory. But what I'm saying is we are breaking, we are placating, and we are part of the deconstruction of the nuclear family, because 80 years ago, it wasn't even an option.
Right. Well, we're encouraging feminism, is what we're doing, because the whole school system, the whole college system, all of that, the sports, that all of it is a boy driven, it's a masculine driven system. It's not a feminine system. It's all just on, based on conquering stuff and power and getting further and excelling and pushing forward and all of that, it's nothing in that is feminine. So then you have, and I speak from experience, my husband speaks from experience, you know, we did it the wrong way.
Too much experience.
And so you're so much functioning as a woman in the masculine that, you know, when you're working and you're doing all of these things, it's very hard to bounce back and forth from that masculine to the feminine.
And the great point you just made is we know from experience. Now here's the thing, that there's this modern notion. This was actually, if any of y'all are familiar with the current dust up about Alistair Begg, or even if you know who he is, but we have an inordinate amount of experience of being lost worldly people. Okay. And we know what lost worldly people do because that's what we did. Right. And we know not only that, I mean, I was a false convert. I was, you know, I made a profession of faith as a young age, and I lived a lost life as a professing Christian. And, you know, the Lord didn't save me till 2016. And so I'm very familiar with Christianese. I'm very familiar, you know, and God was working through all of that and everything. I don't want to discount any of that, but, you know, I'm also very familiar with someone that is self-deceived, you know, and that's why when I talk to people, I encourage them, you know, to consider their ways, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. That's not you working for your salvation, but that's you holding your life up to the light of Scripture and say, you know, how am I a new creature? You know, what happened to me, and do I have victory? You know, not that we'll never fail and we're still in the sinful flesh, but like, do I have victory, or does sin rule and reign and just run me? And then I'm just always looking to, well, ask for forgiveness, because that was the life I lived until 2016, was just a life of repetitive sin that I would repent of, but repent just to get some, to soothe my conscience, to dive right back into it again. And, you know, we take all that into consideration when with training our children and waiting on the Lord to work in their hearts and lives, and then observing them. And I never want to assume anything, you know, and the Lord will allow you to see fruit in different things, and you can be encouraged. But you never should assume anything. And at the same time, you don't have to always think the worst either. You know, I have a tendency to always, you know, suspect the worst and all that good stuff too. And that's not right either. But we've been there and done that. And so it's not a condemn. It was wrong. So it's condemning in that sense. But, you know, people grow, people change. God saves people. God gives them power. God gives them victory, and they can change. And so all that being said, you know, when you try to talk about this topic and you try to talk about really what I call the falling away, and what I call the falling away is it's not obviously a loss of salvation. It's a falling away of truth, where fundamental truth is rejected for postmodern pragmatism. Mm-hmm. Everything surrounding the woman and everything surrounding the man, because just like Faith said, you know, the feminazism prevents the man from being masculine. Mm-hmm. It is a two-way street. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we are so infected and polluted with this stuff, we can't even see it. Mm-hmm. But just start talking about dresses and women and rights and women's rights and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Start talking about rights and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And you will clearly see, and well, you got to be able to, I mean, it'll never hurt. You should, a college education, and you need to be able to, you never know, and you need something to fall back on, and all this stuff.
But it does hurt.
And you know what's funny?
It's very hard to overcome, all of those years of high school and then 4 years of college, and if you're doing internships and working, it's very, very hard to switch those gears. It doesn't come naturally, in my opinion, and from firsthand experience of several friends of mine who tried to do that. A lot failed at that. They could not make that transition from working career degree to motherhood at home. They couldn't do it. It was too hard, and they just went back to work. Not because they needed the money, but because they needed that identity. They couldn't function in the feminine and feel fulfilled because they had lived in a masculine world for too long.
And John's asking for a resource.
Yeah. So right now I'm reading an old book. It's called Fascinating Womanhood. Don't get any of the newer editions. There's new editions on Amazon.
Yeah, there are postmodern versions.
You don't want that.
There's postmodern versions of everything, even the Bible.
You want the 1960s, anything printed in the 1960s or 1970s edition of Fascinating Womanhood. Chew up the meat, spit out the bones. If you can't handle it all, it's totally fine. You don't have to agree 100% with an author. It's a book. Right. It's not the Bible. But that is an excellent place to start for a woman. If you have young ladies, there's also a Fascinating Girl book. Again, find old copies. They do cost money because there's not very many left. But you can find them on eBay or thrifted books, or even in thrift shops, maybe, if you call around. And then my boys are reading, the husband wrote a book called Man of Steel and Velvet. And that was published, I believe, in 1970 or 1972. And I think there's only one copy of that. So you probably do good to find that one. And they both have biblical foundations, and they will really, it's like getting in a boxing ring with your hands tied behind your back, like on every page, and you're just getting beat up because we have come so far. We have come so far since 1960 and 1970.
Yeah, the way that you think needs to be deconstructed and reconstructed. And see, this is where I'm referring to. This is where churches have dropped the ball and missed it, and everything else is you can preach through a chapter verse by verse and handle all the hard stuff and do all of that. You can do all of that. I forget the terminology I'm thinking of, but you can do that. But if there is no practical rubber meets the road application to that, and if those applications don't restrict where you go and restrict what you watch and restrict what you say in a broad way, not in a minute way. And here's the thing, we're watching Hollyweird, and it continues expositional preaching. Yeah, Donnie knew, because that's what Donnie does, but no. But and I wasn't taking a shot at you, Donnie. I'm sorry. But if there's nothing practical in there and why? I mean, yes, for us, but for our children too. And that's how all of this stuff gets lost, because we can read that a woman should be a keeper at home, but nobody's going to preach about it, what that means. That means when you get home from work, you vacuum the carpet and you load the dishes or whatever. No, that's not what it means. It's not what it means. And guess what? 80 years ago, that's not how it went, you know.
Right.
Oh, but we're so much smarter now, and there's been so much progress.
And it says the older women should teach the younger women to love their husbands and to love their children. And if it's limited, most times in most churches, it's extremely limited to find a godly older woman that will actually be very honest with you and like disciple you, because these things are the real nitty gritty kind of things. It's like, oh, well, I think I'm being submissive to my husband. Well, I think I reverence my husband, you know, but I kind of like roll my eyes at him and kind of despise him all day long too. Or I kind of nitpick at him and mother hen him, and, you know, and it's like, well, that's not reverencing your husband. But we can fake ourselves out into thinking, because when we're defining our own terms, when we're reading scripture and we're just defining our own stuff and comparing ourselves to the culture, it's real easy to feel good about yourself.
Yeah,
I mean,
comparing yourselves among yourselves is not wise.
Not wise.
There's a reason the Bible says that. And we've read all these chapters and verses hundreds of times. I've read through the Bible dozens and dozens and dozens of times, maybe 100 times. And you can have a preacher preach through that expositionally, but if there's no practical application, and I'm talking about like challenging and difficult practical well, you know, if I said that, you know, that poor girl in the third row, oh, well, the truth isn't the truth. So you're going to withhold the truth from that poor girl in the third row. And I don't know her backstory, but her backstory doesn't change the truth. You know, her backstory, regardless of her background or whatever happened to her or the other family on the other side of the church, whatever happened to them, I still want my daughter to grow up and to be a keeper at home. And I want her to completely and utterly despise and reject this postmodern concept of the Christian woman. I'm not talking about the worldly woman or even the marginally nice woman that lives down the block or whatever. I'm talking about, I want my daughter in a very large way to completely and utterly reject 89% of what postmodern Christian womanhood is. And this is, you know, I'm picking from the top, not the bottom. And you know, and this is what, if you allow it, it can get you discouraged and make you defeated. And this is where, as a husband and wife, you need to encourage each other and strengthen each other, and you keep on keeping on. And as we see the day approaching, this is what was prophesied was going to happen. You know, and if it were possible, to deceive even the very elect, because Christians are becoming more and more asleep, you know, and you know, and I listen to a lot, and I read a lot, and I study a lot, and I listen to a lot of different preachers and stuff that are they have great, you know, we can learn about Sosthenes and all these different things, right? And oh, that's interesting. I never picked that up before. I never noticed that when you go from here to here. But you can go through an hour of that, and if there's no practical, like what's going to change my life or my child's life tomorrow, it's good to have that knowledge, but it's just head knowledge.
Right.
It serves no practical purpose.
Right. If you lose the family, if you have families that are being divorced, families that are being train wrecked, you know, if you have, and we're seeing it constantly, even these young married couples who were grounded in what you would consider a good a good biblical foundation, good, solid, you would consider conservative churches. And yet they are being just demolished by the culture. And, it's just like, what's the cost? The cost is our children. The cost is their future is broken families. I mean, yeah, it's going to cost something to go dig up some old books. It's going to cost something, you're going to have to lay down some things. You're going to have to, if you are,
a lot of things, most things.
Yeah.
Because Americanism is incredibly selfish. Americanism, I was born in the 70s. I'm a 90s kid, incredibly selfish. And I've been working for my entire married life to shed my selfishness, and I haven't arrived yet, but
marriage is good for that.
Marriage will help that.
Yes.
If you're very selfish, you should get married.
Yeah.
And if you're a man, you should get married to a woman.
Yes. Yeah.
All great recommendations.
It's going to cost you something. It's going to, you're going to find out some things, and you're going to have to relinquish some things about yourself. But if you want to grow and you want to become a better person, and you don't want to live in that past life or in the current culture, who wants the current culture? It's horrible. I mean, that's
the thing.
T-shirt and jeans, bland. I mean, everybody does the same cookie cutter thing. Go to college, go get some
same
9 to 5
loafers,
job.
Same effeminate tapered jeans,
same
gay,
broken family problems, same husband-wife dynamics where you're both trying to fulfill the same roles, and you're both splitting the chores, and he's not really masculine and I'm not really feminine, and
the boys and the girls are both wearing the same tapered jeans,
and the kids are all on sports teams. And I mean, who wants that life? They're all on social media. They're growing up on social media. That is, and you see this flurry of channels. Like, there's literally thousands of channels of people that are waking up. They might not all be Christians, but they are waking up to that, and they're saying,
they're seeing how it's so critically flawed, and how it has been deconstructed like grain of sand by grain of sand. It's been deconstructed, and the funny part, if you want to call it, the tragic part is, when you talk in Christian circles, they can, it's all, one, they're a lot of them are mocking this whole TradCon thing, and this is a LARP and different things because, hip, and, I got the cool long beard with the twisted up mustache, and I smoke cigars and drink cognac and all this stuff because I'm this hipster. Where in the world, like, how did that happen? Like how did that happen?
Right. And a lot of, the ways that you have to find encouragement is finding, as I'm just speaking as a wife, and a mother, and for your children, is finding the things that you do want to encourage, and using, YouTube, we use all the time. We don't have regular, cable TV or anything, but we use YouTube to encourage those things that we want, right? So we put on shows that, the older boys, they love cowboy shows. They love old time Western cowboy shows because men are men and women are women.
And you got to be real careful with that too, because there was that influence started
feminism,
a long time ago.
Can get in there.
You got to be very careful.
But with our younger children, like, we don't let them watch, shows that are just obnoxious, like cartoons with people that have bad attitudes. If I don't want to deal with the attitude that the little child has on the cartoon or on the video, then I am certainly not going to give like, I'm not going to plant that seed for my little child to watch that. So instead, I'm going to pick out things like all of the old time classics. You know, we watch a lot of like Dennis the Menace and the Little Rascals and Shirley Temple movies. And like, we watch a lot of old stuff because there was still character there. That's things that my little girl can aspire to. She, you know, very feminine. They can exemplify those things. And it gives, you know, we all need things to look to, right? So if we're not finding that in our culture, in our society, these are things that can help encourage us um, to grow in these areas and just be more, I hate to say like traditional in our life, but like that's kind of where we're at, I guess. My words are probably lacking. You know, and at nighttime we put on audiobooks and we listen to like old classic, like good audiobooks, literature that's just like really intelligently written, and girls are girls and boys are boys, and it all reinforces that stuff. So whoever it is that you you know, you find people like I find, you know, wives and mothers on YouTube that, you know, exemplify different things that I'm like, wow, I would like to be more like that person in that way. So I watch those videos and I try to work towards that. And it's the same with my children, you know?
That's good. Oh, and I want to clarify. I said a man should marry a woman. I'd like to clarify that. A man can only marry a woman because there's outside of that, there's not marriage because God ordained and defined marriage. So there isn't marriage outside of that. So I want to redefine my statement, or clearly define it. I don't want to redefine it. There's a lot of that stuff going on, but
yeah, but it's interesting because it's so much deeper than like the attack on femininity. It's like, I think we were talking about this the other day, and I said, you know, it's like a feed bag, and you pull that little string on the top of the feed sack, and then the whole thing comes unraveled, right?
The one that I can never get to do the thing,
yeah,
and so I always have to take my knife.
But if you know how to do it,
if you do,
you pull the one little string on the top of that feed sack, and the whole thing comes undone, right? So I said that is just like taking femininity away from the woman. Somebody earlier was saying that they were all dressed in reenactment dresses today and they had so much fun, and they were just reminiscing of like, why can't women be feminine like this? You know, that's actually fun. Yeah, it's how we were designed to be, right? But they pull that string and it's all done. Like, it's all gone. And it's just crazy. It's crazy, ladies, how much influence we have on our husbands and how much influence we have on our children. And the weight really, I mean, it's on the man to provide for the family. That all that weight is on him, but there's a lot of weight on our shoulders to really, in today's day and age, be feminine, truly feminine, not just putting on a dress or putting on a dress on Sunday. That does not make you feminine. It has a lot to do with what's going on in your mind and your thoughts and your behaviors. And it goes so deep that it's just like, well, I don't work and I stay home and I wear a dress on Sunday, so I'm feminine. Like, there's just so much more to it.
So. Yeah, and your husband has to go out there and earn a living for a family, competing with guys that farm their wife out. You know, and how easy, you know, I know some of these guys, you know, and
right.
Well, so I don't want to peel back the onion too much, but yeah, you're working
twice as hard.
I'm working twice as hard, and he's not working hard because, well, wifey's bringing home half the bacon, so I can play on my phone or go to the gym for an extra hour or whatever, because I don't have to hunt, because my wife's hunting with me too, because we're bros. We're complementarians. We're egalitarians and complementarians. And I categorically reject this new complementarian nonsense that's going around, because, well, and there's these guys redefining the patriarchy as you're like some kind of ogre, and you hate women and you hate your wife if you want to be a man and lead and provide.
There's
exclusively.
There's no higher calling than that. I mean, I don't think there's any more.
I don't understand how we got so confused. It's not that hard. We're designed to do this, and we can do it. And, and it's part of the reason why when you get improper feedback that it bothers you. And it's because you're designed to, and when you're in battle, you have to, there's not a lot of time for diplomacy and for, let's take a vote. There's not a lot of time for democracy. Well, let's all vote on it. Let's see, and how does that, and democracy is fake. I mean, democracy in America is completely fake. Okay. Voting is fake. Democracy everywhere around the world is fake.
And democracy in the home is fake too.
And democracy in the home is fake.
Totally fake.
Because a democratic home is run by the woman. So there ain't no democracy.
Or run by the kids.
Or the kids, woman. Yeah. Children rule over them, and women are their oppressors. I think there's a curse somewhere in there. That's how that goes, and that is a prophetic fulfillment.
Yeah. So I mean, there's just so much to learn, I think, from past, from history, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to dig into it and find out and start reading some good books, and find some things that'll encourage you, find some things that'll encourage what you want in your children, and don't be afraid to just stand for truth and stand against the culture.
Yeah. And you're going to, it's definitely going to be awkward. It's going to feel awkward. People are going to purposely make you feel awkward. Because, for one, I mean, that's the whole point of peer pressure. Is it's just like all the experiments they've done, where, okay, they put this test subject in a room with a bunch of canned people, and they say, okay, everybody give the wrong answer, right? And then in the beginning, the person being observed is giving the right answer, but then they conform because they don't want to stick out. They don't want to be the weirdo. And so the social engineers know that this is a massive driver to manipulate society as a whole. Hence, the whole notion of everybody always wants to talk about democracy. Why? Because they know they can manipulate everybody democratically, because democracy is the biggest manipulation tactic, which is why people were scared to say who they voted for. That's a real democracy. Well, if I was honest, I would have gotten whatever. And like, big deal. Like that's such a minor, dumb thing. There was no even any real consequences to any of that, and it's a joke, but you have to be willing to be the weirdo to stand out and to verbalize what you believe. And, it was really neat a couple weeks ago. And I think I talked about this, and I won't rehash it again, but one of the guys I work with said, well, Jim believes this, and I'm like, sweet. Yeah, good. I'm like, man, you said that perfectly. And that was awesome. And I'm glad that I've said it enough, and I've said it with parrhesia and skill and ability, that you completely understand where I am and what I believe. And relatively speaking, it's diametrically opposite to most of the people I work with, which is okay. I mean, I wish it weren't that way, but wishes and whatever, wish in one hand and, throw a rock or whatever. I forget how the saying goes. Well, I do know. I'm not going to repeat the saying, but.
Yeah. Well, it's no big secret that our families functioned a whole lot better back 50 to 100 years ago. And if you take, I mean, basically we were there. Christianity was more authentic then, but also you just had the proper gender roles, and you had women who were authentically feminine in their nature, not just in their dress, not just in how they decorate their house, but they were authentically feminine in their nature and in their behavior and in their mind. And then you had men that were by default more masculine. That's how that works. That's the true complementarianism I don't believe in this new definition of complementarianism, but if you want to know what true
masculinity complements feminine, they're
right.
designed
right.
to work.
They said it's
hand
like
in glove.
a lock and a key, right?
Yeah.
The two are distinctly different. But when you put those two together, that lock and that key actually function, and it works. And it doesn't mean that one is more valuable than the other. It just means that they are very, very distinctively different, and they have two totally different functions. And that's okay.
It's totally okay. Of course. When you start blurring the lines, this is how we have, children using litter boxes in public school bathrooms and stuff, and you have guys thinking they're women. And so this is how, Confusion. This is why. It's not because they changed the DSM.
No, it's a lot of reasons, I think, but one of the big reasons is that Satan is the author of confusion. Satan loves confusion, and they have just unraveled society by deconstructing the woman. And they fooled women into thinking that we, in doing this, we have more empowerment. In doing this, we have equality. And in doing all of this, we're making such great strides and gains, and we're not. Like, look at our families, look at the destruction that it's caused, look at society as a whole. It's down the tubes because they've deconstructed the woman.
Progress. And it's all, it's different now. The culture's different. Stop being such a Luddite. Stop living in the past, man. No, as time goes by, a man is still a man and a woman is still a woman. And what made a woman 100 years ago is the same exact thing that makes a woman now. And what made a man 100 years ago is the same thing that makes a man now. And all of this World War II and Bretton Woods and Sally Steamfitter and all of this communism and socialism does not change the fact of what a man is, doesn't change the fact of what a woman is. It certainly doesn't change the fact of a biblical order, general orders, the patriarchy, or any of that. That cannot change. That is just the same way biblical marriage can't change, is the exact same way the patriarchal order of God's creation cannot change, regardless of whatever society does. Society is going to continue to go down. There is, I really hate to break it to, if there's anybody on here that thinks like we're bringing in the kingdom and it's going to get bigger, stronger, faster, and better. That is not perceivable in reality. That doesn't exist, regardless of whether Roe v. Wade got voted down, whatever that means, by a bunch of, Kabbalists and Catholics. They in their great Christian, in a great Christian movement of God, they voted down Roe v. Wade. No, nothing happened.
Right.
They still kill lots and lots and lots of babies.
Yeah. I think, and the biggest thing, Lena was saying, saying a couple things, but the biggest thing is encouraging your children to stand strong in who they are and not be afraid to be different, to be independent, and to let them know what their strengths are. If they are boys, build those strengths. You should be building those strengths from the time that they are little, and not ever diminishing them or demeaning them or confusing them on their strengths. Little boys have different strengths than little girls. Just like my husband has a whole different strength set than I have. And they are totally different. Our everything about us is totally different. But when you're raising children, it's the same. So the way that you raise little boys, you are going to be finding those masculine attributes, and you're going to be encouraging those things, if you want him to be a provider, if you want him to be strong and to work and just take initiative on things, you're going to be training that from the time he's 2 years old or less, all the way up. So he has pride in what he does. He knows he's a hard worker. He's been told, I'm a hard worker. Wow, you really got that done. Wow, you did a good job on that. Wow, and that is the role of the mother and the woman to do that, to bring all of that out in that little boy. And with the little girl, it's you focus on all of her feminine qualities. She's so nurturing. Wow, you're a good little mama. Wow, you really take good care of that puppy. Oh, you're so sweet and kind to that chicken, or whatever it is, or wow, you really did that so beautifully. Oh, you organized your drawers so nicely. Like, wow, that is really neat. Or, you're training those things, and all you're doing is just amplifying what God already instilled in those little people, that they're already inherently masculine and feminine,
designed that way.
They are designed that way, but you're just encouraging them in all of those things, so that way when they become adults, they are very secure in who they are.
Because what would happen if you did the opposite? They would be very confused. Yeah. Oh no, Johnny, boys can play with dolls. Why don't you put on your sister's dress? And the next thing you know, they're like,
right. Or stop crying like a girl.
Yeah.
Stop acting like a little girl, or
using a litter box.
Yeah. Or,
surprise.
You hit the ball like a girl. You should hit it like a boy, or whatever. Like, there's lots of things that our culture says to demean children and confuse children, or to reprimand a little boy for being masculine and being a little boy. That's horrible, and it's abusive to their nature, which is another reason why our children are not in any type of school situation.
No type of school situation, no type of organized sport situation.
No, because influence comes from everywhere. Influence doesn't just come from a government school. Influence comes from even the best of the best private Christian school, private school, the best of the best team sports.
And we'll play pickleball, we'll throw the ball around, we'll do different things, but from an organized level, for one, it's just, it's just worthless. Okay. There's no skill. Like, later in life, it's never going to help you. It's not a real world skill where you can feed your family with it. And besides the fact that it all happens on the Lord's Day and all that stuff, and all these Christian athletes and all that stuff, I mean, whatever. I mean, it's antithetical. Okay. It's antithetical to Christianity. It doesn't make any sense. And this is all part of the deconstruction of postmodern Christianity. This was all part of it. And it's crazy. But,
yeah. And you don't know that wonderful Christian school teacher who you have with your child all day long. You don't know if she's really inwardly like is her. You don't know what her
Jezebel.
attitude is. You don't know how she treats her husband at home. You don't know anything. And all of that comes out. Little people pick up on all of that stuff. You cannot fool them. And, you know, somebody will disciple your children. Somebody will raise your children. If it's not you, it's all influence. It's just, yeah. So you have to be in charge of that.
Well, rather than us just drone on for another hour, I guess we'll wrap this up. We appreciate all y'all hanging out and all the great feedback and interaction. It's been great having lots of new faces on tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad we could get this to finally work. So that was nice.
Yeah. So do real things with them instead.
Yeah, do real things in real time in the real world.
Go to parks, go catch bugs, go to a state park, sign up for adventure stuff, learn about critters that, you know, we did all kinds of things over the years to, even when we didn't live on a farm, there's lots of opportunities.
Yes, very much.
That aren't
very much so.
That aren't organized
real
sports.
Stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Randy, what's up, man? Good having you on, Randy. Glad to hear you're still having much success with the carnivore lifestyle. Buddy, it was great meeting you. All right, y'all.
Okay.
We'll see y'all in the next video.
Bye.